In this hands-on buyer's guide, we're taking a look at our favorite small size knives. Obviously, any adjective like small is arbitrary unless you explicitly define it. So for us, this generally means any knife with a maximum open length of 6 inches or less. On the other end of the spectrum, we shied away from dedicated keychain knives, even though yes, by our definition, those would technically qualify. But we have a dedicated keychain knife guide, so switch lanes now and go check that out if you'd rather. Anyway, for the small blades that we're examining today, some even give them the name fifth pocket companions, as they generally fit quite nicely inside the smaller front pocket of a pair of jeans. So to lay that out plainly, we're looking at knives under 6 inches that are not meant to be carried on a keychain. They can have varying blade lengths and handle lengths, but the two components can't exceed 6 inches total for the purpose of this guide. Now that we've cleared that up, and without anything further, let's take a look at our first small knife selection from CIVIVI with a baby Banter. Let's begin with our first pick, the CIVIVI Baby Banter. Our version sports a black G10 handle and a gray stonewashed 2.34 inch Nitro V blade with an overall length of 5.46 inches with the blade deployed. The Baby Banter is one of our favorite small EDC knives for a few reasons. Much like the Benchmade Bug Out Mini, which didn't quite make our size qualifier for this guide, the Baby Banter comes in a wide range of blade steel options and scale options. Second, in our opinion, it's just as well made as the full-size Banter, even with a smaller and lighter profile. It's designed by knife maker and designer Ben Peterson, who collaborated with manufacturer CIVIVI to bring it to life. As the story goes, Peterson used the Spyderco Dragonfly as a jumping-off point, intending to improve this knife by adding a few design considerations that he believed were missing. What was born was the Baby Banter. If you want to dive really deep into the origin story, Ben actually has a blog called benbanter.com. Head over there next if you're interested, and we definitely recommend doing so. Okay, our third reason. The action is just so damn smooth. It almost feels strangely assisted, even though it's definitely not. Size-wise, this sibling to the full-size Banter was also created to abide by blade length laws in a few major cities like Chicago and Boston, to name a few, which max out around 2.5 inches long. Thus, the Baby Banter's blade measures up at 2.34 inches. Our version uses a New Jersey-made low-cost steel called Nitro V, which maintains a hardness of about 59 to 61 HRC. Within the choil that extends into the handle, as well as the spine between the dual blue thumb studs, we have plenty of jimping to aid grip, something you'll find can be fairly tricky with small-sized knives, especially if you have larger hands. Luckily, if you like the idea of the Baby Banter and do end up finding it too small, you can always step up to the regular size Banter. Now, doing the math, that leaves us with a 3.12 inch handle. This one made with black G10. One side houses the nested liner lock, which keeps the blade firmly in place when extended, and a small, fairly hidden detent close to the cage ceramic ball bearing pivot assembly keeps pressure on the blade when closed to keep it from accidentally deploying. Last, but certainly not least, small size knives will still build in pocket clips 9 times out of 10. They're not made for keychains. There's a distinct difference. They're made to be carried in the pocket, most often just like their full-size counterparts, whether that be your regular side pocket, a fifth pocket, or on the side of your leg in the utility pocket. The Baby Banter uses a color match to the rest of the hardware pocket clip, and it natively comes tip up, which we appreciate. Next up, RZE's HexEdge. Predictably following the brutalist RZE MO, the HexEdge is a microblade crafted from grade 5 titanium, as well as reliable D2 blade steel, sporting a matching titanium coating. There are a few reasons as to why we included the HexEdge as one of our favorite small size knives, so let's go ahead and unpack that. First, we have a compact overall length of 4.09 inches made up of a 1.66 inch D2 blade and a 2.44 inch grade 5 titanium handle. Its size falls well below our 6 inch max qualifier by almost a full 2 inches. Second, the overall design feels extremely cohesive in relation to the rest of RZE's existing catalog of full titanium watches and EDC gear. It certainly screams RZE to us. Third, for such a compact size, we still get a hard-wearing frame lock, a versatile clip point blade shape, and a full-size deep carry pocket clip. Plus, RZE's added just a bit more utility by way of a backspacer which moonlights as a pry bar and a lanyard loop. The blade uses a hefty cutout, which helps our thumb be able to flick the blade out in a snappy way that makes the action feel overall very smooth and crisp for the size. This is obviously also made possible by the pivot assembly, which RZE actually doesn't say much about, except for the obvious orange accent pivot ring we get on both sides of the handle. With it deployed, and there are two options, a flip tab or by using the blade cutout to flick the blade into position, the spine houses a good degree of jimping for thumb grip, and our index finger seems to naturally find a home within the single central notch cut into both sides of the titanium handle. This grip configuration feels sturdy, and we'd be confident using for most basic cutting tasks. We'd say if RZE does roll out a Generation 2, one of our only considerations would probably be to consider an over-travel stop for the frame lock. As you can see, it does flex quite a ways in the opposite direction, so we'd be just a touch concerned about the blade accidentally snapping shut when not intended, although we've by no means experienced this yet or have anecdotally heard reports of this either. Depending on the cost, we also wouldn't mind them syncing the pocket clip attachment point to be flush with the handle like some of our other picks have done. You just need to machine a small cutout in the titanium handle to make this a reality. This is but a super minor passing thought though. Moving on. We're going dark for our next small size knife with Spyderco's Japanese-made Manbug Wharncliffe, a 4.39-inch knife with a 1.9-inch titanium carbonitride coated blade and a 2.5-inch all-black FRN handle. This is the type of small size knife that comes without a pocket clip and no machining to accommodate one, that slips all the way into a fifth pocket for a more discreet carry. You could just as well, yes, technically carry the Manbug on a keychain by way of this lanyard loop built into the back side of the handle, but it would probably be easier and well suited on a dedicated lanyard hanging from a belt loop if you were to do so. One of our favorite parts about the Manbug Wharncliffe, besides the actual blade shape, is the sturdy lockback system that you can find on some of Spyderco's knives that retail far above the current price point of the Manbug. Unlike the Spyderco compression lock, the lockback system isn't proprietary Spyderco tech, but it's used fairly widely in their catalog, and it's a seriously reliable system, and it allows the knife to stay quite thin. In hand, the Manbug feels light, and that can make you feel as though it can't take any serious amount of force. But the inclusion of the backlock here gives us a ton of confidence despite the phantom in-hand weight at just 0.7 ounces. That's about 20 grams. The Wharncliffe blade is machined from Japanese VG10, no surprise, as is the entire Manbug. Spyderco going so far as to provide the actual Seki, as a blade stamp on the opposite side of the blade steel stamp. Quick anecdote, Seki is largely considered Japanese current knife making mecca, so including this specific information on the blade is a way to lend some credibility to the offshore manufacturing, Spyderco also having an in-house stateside facility in Colorado. Also built into the blade is a typical Spyderco thumb and or finger hole for deployment. Despite its size, the blade is quite easy to open, but the action isn't nearly as smooth as our previous two picks. You could loosen the pivot assembly just a hair, but then you do risk some wobble with the blade. That being said, there really isn't enough weight or blade mass to flick the knife into place the same way as our previous picks, and it certainly seems to do better with constant rotational force on the blade until it locks into place. Next up, one of the smallest knives in the Zero Tolerance catalog. The 0022 is a Tim Gallion design, a knife maker with a specific high-end tactical focus who teamed up with Zero Tolerance, part of the Kai USA brand, to bring this pint-sized 4.875-inch blade to life. The 022 is constructed from hyper-premium materials, CPM 20CV for the 1.875-inch clip point blade, a blue anodized titanium pivot collar, and of course, the stealthy carbon fiber handle sporting two deep finger notches for as much utility as possible. Alright, well you only do get one side in carbon fiber, but the other is titanium, so that combination is pretty sweet. Plus the titanium builds in a frame lock, which is equally awesome. If you're looking for a tactically inspired small size knife, it checks all the boxes and does so for a very reasonable price. The blade uses a stonewash finish, a good degree of jimping on the spine, a shape that overall maintains a strong point and a gentle curve for tasks like skinning or long sweeping cuts. 20CV itself is an American-made steel, not surprisingly, as is the entirety of the 0022, and deployment is made possible by a manual flip tab, which also machines in a few notches of jimping to help with grip. Housing that beautiful blue anodized titanium collar is our 2.95-inch carbon fiber titanium handle. Both materials in this case definitely help the small blade stay lightweight, 1.75 ounces to be exact. The carbon fiber side is smooth and unbroken, but provides two threads for mounting the pocket clip that's natively attached to that titanium portion and orients the knife tip up. On the 180, the titanium half machines in that frame lock, partially hidden under the blacked out pocket clip. Much like the HexEdge, we thought at first that an over-travel stop would be appropriate here, but the long pocket clip kind of acts like one, just by its native position alone. The pocket clip is certainly not meant to act in this manner though, just to be clear, and we don't believe that was Zero Tolerance's intention by any means. As a last note, the action is smooth, the in-hand feel feels as balanced as possible for a knife of this size, and we love the way it sits deep in the pocket by way of that lengthy clip. Our next small knife comes to you from ProTech, a high-consumption neighbor proudly manufacturing their knives right here in Southern California. Since 1998, ProTech, under the direction of founder Dave Wattenberg, has been a family operation crafting signature, hand-built, hyper-premium knives, and actually the Runt was the one that started them all. Today, we have the ProTech Runt 5 Reverse Tanto Automatic OTS at 5.12 inches overall with a 1.96-inch American-made MagnaCut steel blade and a 3.25-inch black textured aluminum handle. The Runt 5 is a snappy, extremely solid feeling knife for its profile, using a push-button deployant right next to the pivot assembly, and they specifically crafted the handle to make the knife as comfortable to hold as possible. The texture on the sides and the top of the two-part aluminum handle also go a long way to bolster its utility. ProTech chose MagnaCut for this particular model, a fairly new super steel creation from the mind of metallurgist Dr. Laren Thomas. CPM MagnaCut scores extremely high across toughness, corrosion resistance, and edge retention, and also sports an even grain, making it fairly easy to sharpen or even polish up if you wanted to. The Runt 5 uses a reverse Tanto shape, a profile known for its strength and toughness of the tip in particular, making it a great option for piercing tasks. It's an all-around great shape for precision cutting tasks as well, though. Moving on to the handle, the blacked out aluminum is a two-piece unit that joins together on top, effectively eliminating the need for any separate backspacer. It also provides a nice flat surface for resting your thumb and the meaty part of your palm for grip, the fine diamond-shaped machining on the sides and near the blade spine only helping that. The hardware, including everything but the pocket clip, is closely color matched to the stonewash finish of the blade, even down to the pocket clip screws which sit flush with the anodized aluminum handle. And this might seem like a no-brainer to point out, but hey, there are actually people who like a tip-down style carry. Yeah, I know. But the Runt 5 comes natively tip-up, so we're happy about that, and it sits in the pocket nicely with a full-size blacked-out pocket clip. Pressing the flat circular automatic button springs the blade open with an action that's extremely precise and snappy. With so much torque, you can feel it in the handle. The blade itself locks into place automatically, obviously, and once having done so, stays firmly locked with no perceived lateral play whatsoever. True that this is more so an issue with OTFs versus OTS knives, but we have seen some poor craftsmanship with OTS automatics in the past, so this is worth mentioning. Next up, Kershaw's Launch 4, a California legal automatic OTS with a 1.9-inch CPM 154 blade, a 3.2-inch 6061 T6 aluminum handle, and an overall 5.1-inch total length. Much like the Spyderco Manbug, the Launch 4 uses a stealthy, tactical, complete black wash, Cerakote for the spear point blade, and anodization for the aluminum handle. Also like the Runt 5, the Launch 4 lives up to its family name with a robust opening kick. We also love that the Launch 4 is fully made in the United States, Kershaw even including a laser flag engraving toward the end of the pocket clip. And it utilizes an American powdered metallurgy blade steel, CPM 154, made by Crucible Industries. Although it doesn't quite perform as well as the Runt 5's MagnaCut across popular metrics, it's an extremely solid choice, similarly made as a premium blade steel, and is an excellent value for the price. To us, the Launch 4's appearance can be a little confusing. If you were to just take a look at the handle from the top down, you may think OTF? The shape of the two-piece anodized aluminum handle is completely symmetrical, but you'd be wrong. When the blade's deployed, it also maintains symmetry, almost the same shape as a dagger or a throwing knife, except there's only one edge and the blade itself uses chamfers in differing thicknesses that are certainly asymmetrical. Focusing on the handle, even though it doesn't use any deep notches or pattern for grip, it's comfortable in hand with a normal grip. In other words, thumb placed on the blade spine or near the spine on the handle with your palm wrapped around the rest. And the fine texture of the anodization actually provides enough to feel adequate. Kershaw specifically designed the Launch 4 with a low-profile push-button deployant to avoid any sort of accidents when not intended for use, say in the pocket. This makes it ever so slightly more difficult to deploy normally. We felt that you have to really push the button intentionally, much harder than that of say the Runt 5, and if you have larger fingers, you may have to use the tip of the nail to do so. Of course, this was intended and wholly the point, but it can feel, well, sticky at times, for lack of better words. And if you look very closely, there's some red inlay going on with a few concentric circles. It's definitely meant to help with grip, and does so to a degree, but seems as though this is far more an aesthetic consideration than a functional one, seeing as the button is so small to begin with. On the 180, the pocket clip here almost extends the full length of the knife. If you've ever used, say, the Launch 18 in the same family, you'll know that they could have easily opted for a shorter unit, but they decided to slap on a full-length pocket clip instead that sits snug in the pocket. Pretty interesting. And in this case, we really don't mind that at all. That's by no means a critique, but we'll swing to the other side about some elements that we really appreciate. The integrated backspacer, or actually lack thereof, like a few of our other choices, makes it feel in hand as though it could be an integral design. kind of, while it most certainly is not. We also have to point out that for any automatic OTF or OTS, this OTS doesn't have any noticeable lateral play when deployed. And last but certainly not least, the Launch 4 gives any California residents or other residents in areas where automatic knife restrictions are in play the option to buy into the Kershaw Launch family. Our last small knife pick, one with a full length under 6 inches, is a collaboration of two giants in the knife making world who have created a hard-hitting catalog under the venture Giantmouse, currently based in California, USA, building beautiful, clean, Danish-inspired designs. Knife makers Jesper Voxnes and Jan Zanso teamed up with Jim Wirth circa 2015 and have since built one of our favorite knife catalogs on the market. The sub 6-inch model we're talking about today, the impressive Giantmouse ACE Nibbler Titanium. Playfully named after the character Nibbles, or Tuffy Mouse from the 1940s American cartoon series Tom and Jerry, the Ace Nibbler's pint-sized build certainly doesn't diminish any of its utility. Small side note, just to clear up any confusion, there's a heavy emphasis on the Danish design inspiration and American ethos with the American cartoon naming convention, but this knife is currently manufactured in China. Be that as it may, it didn't disqualify it from our list of favorites. To date, the ACE Nibbler Titanium is Giantmouse's smallest folder, sporting an overall length of just 4.7 inches, composed of a 2-inch 20CV blade and a 2.76-inch titanium handle, accented with a beautiful full brass backspacer. We're enamored with the overall approach and the design. It's one that's quite easily identifiable as a Giantmouse creation based on the shape, but also the use of materials. That contrasting brass backspacer is a dead giveaway. Well, perhaps a giveaway for Voxnes, much like the Voxnes designed CRKT Pilar family, which does integrate that brass backspacer occasionally. 20CV, more specifically CPM 20CV, is an American-made steel, comparable to say Bowler's M390 with added vanadium and chromium, scoring high marks across corrosion resistance and edge retention, and also a good degree of toughness thrown in the mix as well. The Wharncliffe shape is one of our favorites at HICONSUMPTION, maintaining a long flat cutting edge and a highly durable tip for piercing and precision cuts. The Ace Nibbler sports a pear-shaped cutout you can use to, as Giantmouse puts it, Spidey flick the blade into place, the action snapping with an audibly satisfying sound and a tangibly satisfying feeling in hand. One note here, we do wish Giantmouse used just a touch of jimping on the blade spine. The small size of the Ace Nibbler already does somewhat limit its utility if you have larger hands and can't grip the knife as you would a full-size unit, so adding grip on the top of the blade could go a long way. Keeping the blade securely locked into place during use is a nested liner lock which sits flush with the titanium scale that houses it when not in use. We're generally big fans of titanium for EDC and more specifically knife making, so absolutely no complaints here in regards to the matted titanium handle. What is interesting is the use of brass thrown in the mix. Now, it's more or less a Voxnes design trademark, no doubt, but it definitely adds weight to the pint-sized nibbler, going quite a ways to counteract the lightweight properties of titanium. That being said, the overall weight is just 2.5 ounces, and when you get the Ace Nibbler in hand, there may be a reason for its integration past the intention for visual contrast. And this is to say that you can feel that it adds weight to the back end of the knife, and it feels like it balances the overall in-hand feel when one deploys the blade. Obviously, this isn't something that they've disclosed directly as an intention of theirs. This is solely our observation, but we thought it noteworthy enough to share. Another signature Giantmouse MO specifically is this recessed wire style pocket clip, which orients the blade tip up, which we love, which one can swap to the other side of the handle by way of a single torque screw. And with Giantmouse, you've made it to the end of our guide highlighting a selection of our current favorite small size knives. So a sincere thank you for spending your time with us this far. If you'd like to find out even more about these knives and more, head over to HICONSUMPTION.com next or browse our other EDC video knife guides, each of which are hand curated and painstakingly assembled by the HICONSUMPTION team. And, as always, if you didn't see your favorite mentioned, as there are many small size knives besides the ones we've chosen to highlight as a cross section of our current favorites here, drop us a line below, as we always love to hear from you.